This video is brought to you by Roll for Combat, an official Paizo actual play podcast. Join Acheron, Hap, Alhara, Riley, Darius, and the entire Circus of Wayward Wonders as they save the Starstone Isles from the dreaded extinction curse. Listen now to 3 Ring Adventure at rollforcombat.com. Hey everybody, Dave here with another Pathfinder rule reminder video for you, and today's topic is Trip. So first off, what is Trip? Well, Trip is an application of the athletic skill, and what it does is it allows you to impose the prone condition on an enemy. It requires you to have one free hand, and you roll an athletic skill check versus the reflex DC of your enemy, and on a success, you impose the prone condition on them, and on a critical success, they also suffer 1d6 bludgeoning damage. So the first question that I received was why do you need to have a hand free to trip? Why can't you just use your foot to sweep someone's legs out from underneath of them and trip them that way? So I think first things first, tripping someone, it may be called trip, but I think from a rules mechanic perspective, it might be better to think of it as imposing the prone condition or knocking someone prone. And within the narrative, that can take a number of different forms. I think most likely it would probably involve grabbing hold of them and shoving them down or pushing them. It seems like in reality, more often than not, someone grabs hold of you and then uses their ankle behind your ankle and uses the leverage to push you down. I think that's what the trip is being envisioned as within Pathfinder 2nd edition. But you do not have to have a hand free if you are using a weapon that has the trip trait. If you're using a weapon with the trip trait, then that's going to give you a number of different benefits. First of those being you don't have to have a free hand. The second of those being that if that weapon has an item bonus associated with it, then you get to add that item bonus to your athletic skill check for a trip. And the third is if that is a reach weapon, then you get to use the distance of the reach. So if you are wielding a bow staff, which has the trip trait, that's a two-handed weapon, you've got it in both hands, you can make trip attacks with it without having a free hand. If it's a +1 bow staff, you're going to add 1 to your athletic skill check, and a bow staff is also a reach weapon, so you can trip someone from 2 squares away, even diagonally, when using a bow staff. The second question about trip that came up is, can you make an attack of opportunity with trip? By raw, no you cannot. A trip is a skill check, and attack of opportunity calls for strikes, so you cannot make an attack of opportunity with a trip. And the third question about trip is, what about multiple attack penalties? Well, the trips have the attack trait, which makes them attacks. So yes, they both are affected by and do contribute to the multiple attack penalty, just like a strike would. And the last question I received about trips was, can you trip a flying creature? And yes, you can trip a flying creature. There's nothing about trip that requires you to be standing on solid ground, or for your enemy or your target to be standing on solid ground. You can trip a flying creature. Within the narrative, I think that just looks like you're bludgeoning them down towards the ground, you're grabbing hold of them and throwing them with force towards the ground. If they're flying at you, maybe you clothesline them as they pass. You do something that's not a leg sweep, but you're still forcing them down to the ground. That's mechanically still called a trip. Now, if a flying creature is tripped, then you can check out the text for the prone condition, and it specifically calls out that when a flying creature is knocked prone, then they begin to fall. And so when a flying creature falls, they can use their reaction on arrest a fall and try to righten themselves. I mean, after all, they're flying creatures, they should have some ability to resist the force of gravity pulling them down. So this would be Arrest a Fall. It's an acrobatics check versus DC 15, and on a success, they still fall, and if they reach the ground during that round, per the falling rules, then they do not suffer any damage. Now, when you hit the ground on a fall and suffer damage, you land prone. But if you hit the ground and you do not suffer damage, then you do not fall prone. So my reading of the rules here is if you trip a flying creature, they fall, and if they are close enough to the ground that they reach the ground in that turn, then they make that arrest to fall. If they succeed, then they do not take any damage and therefore are not prone. Now that said, if the trip attack was a critical success, I would still apply the 1d6 bludgeoning damage because, hey, it's a critical success. Let's not rob a player of a really nice roll. I would just describe that bludgeoning damage as being the force of being hit that sends that flying creature towards the ground, as opposed to the impact of the ground. So that's it. 4 kind of rapid fire answers about Trip. If any of that was not clear, please let me know in the comments. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know as well. And of course, I want to take just a quick second to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me, whether that's through clicking the like button on the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving your suggestions for future rule reminders, sharing the videos with your friends, subscribing to the Patreon. It all adds up, and I greatly appreciate everything you folks do to support me. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.